All right, so we had Tzadik Harishon Beriva Uva Re'ehu V'Chakaro, which seems like our normal translation was the first one in his dispute, seems right, and his friend comes in and interrogates him. And we had a bit of a dispute about whether, what did we agree on? We agreed on the fact that the judge is going to be biased in a certain way towards the first argument he hears because it is going unchallenged. Yeah. And then the question is, when the second guy comes and challenges it, is it going to put the litigant at a disadvantage or at an advantage? Meaning, you could say that like the Ralbag, or like Isaac and Zev, that it's going to put the interrogator or you two were on one team, right?
I guess so.
I thought so. Yeah. We can check the tape. What was I going to say?
Who's negatively affected?
Right. So thank you. The second guy is going to be put in a situation where he's questioning the facts.
Right.
Right. The first guy said it, and that's going to be established as the facts. And then I was saying, and Joe was on my team there. What was it? Mishlei David, clearly that the second guy is in the position of the objector and the refuter, and that kind of puts him at an advantage because it puts the first guy on the defensive. And then I didn't say this in shiur, but I was searching for a name for it in shiur, and it turns out the name is anchoring. Which is a cognitive bias. So I just wanted to read the Wikipedia article because I don't know if it's exactly the same as our pasuk, but it sounds like it, similar. Anchoring or focalism, sounds like a cult, is a cognitive bias where an individual depends too heavily on an initial piece of information offered, considered to be the anchor, to make subsequent judgments during decision making. Once the value of this anchor is set, all future negotiations, arguments, estimates, etc., are discussed in relation to the anchor. Information that aligns with the anchor tends to be assimilated towards it, while information that is more dissonant or less related tends to be displaced. This bias occurs when interpreting future information using this anchor to gauge. And then it gives one example, which I'll say anyway. For example, the initial price offered for a used car set either before or at the start of negotiations sets an arbitrary focal point for all following discussions. Prices discussed in negotiations that are lower than the anchor may seem reasonable, perhaps even cheap to the buyer, even if said prices are still relatively higher than the actual market value of the car. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at Rabbeinu Yonah because he takes a different approach to this, and I think it might help us to sharpen our approach. Yeah.
I just have a brief comment about that.
Yeah.
About what I know about the anchoring effect.
Yeah.
That two things. Well, one is even if you know that it has the anchor has no basis in reality.
Yeah.
Like let's say there was an experiment where they.
Is this the cutting the line?
Is it?
Is this the cutting the line experiment?
I don't know what they could.
Okay.
They had
Go on.
Like a wheel with like numbers like from like 1 to 100.
Yeah.
That was like rigged to stop on specific numbers. But that's like when they spun that and then used that number as an anchor, people still had the anchoring effect, even though they knew that. And the other thing is that
what was it?
Yeah. Basically, people got a number and they knew that the number was random.
Right.
Except that it was rigged to be honest.
Okay.
But and they were using that as like the anchor. The way the experiment was that they asked whether a certain thing was more or less than that number, and then they asked what it was.
Oh, I see.
So people still had the anchoring effect, even though they knew it had no basis in reality. The second thing is that consciously recognizing that there's an anchor and trying to move away from it, trying to abandon that as an anchor, helps a lot with it.
Oh, good. So that lends us up to this pasuk. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like a purpose of the pasuk.
Yeah, that's good. Good to hear. Okay. All right. So let's do Rabbeinu Yonah, and you guys tell me if there's any. I still don't know in terms of the addition of Rabbeinu Yonah on All Torah if it's different than that one. So tell me if you see anything radically different. Okay. So Tzadik Harishon Beriva.
Radically different or even subtly different?
Oh, even slightly different. Sorry. Yeah. Slightly different. Tzadik Harishon Beriva. Hamaktim lelechas lifnei beis-din umagid lifnehem ta'anosav. So someone who preemptively goes to beis-din, who goes early and tells in front of the Beis Din his arguments, Yitzdak v'davarav, he will be right in his words, or we don't know if it's seen yet. Oh, okay, so this is different. So Yitzdak v'davarav, he will be righteous in his words. Meaning he's going to make himself, he says, because it's not the way of people to tell their liabilities, but to tell only their merit. So he's going to go and present himself. So Tzaddik Harishon Brivo, that the first guy to go to the Beis Din is going to present himself as being righteous. Yeah, right. I mean, I think it is meritorious, but like.
But won't the second person do that also?
Let's see what he says about the second person.
I'm just saying, I keep saying righteous, and I mean meritorious.
Yeah. I also wanted to point out that this is slightly different facts because this is not talking about the court case is officially on and who testifies first, but this is a guy who like tries to get in early. He like catches the judge on his way into the courthouse. Okay, so then he says like this. Yeah.
It sounds like it's like it could just be he's trying to go first.
That could be. Let's see. Uvarehu v'chakaro ma ho'il. So what benefit is going to be kasher hikdim tanosav when he preemptively states his tanos. V'hitim tanosav udvarav l'shofet shlo bifnei baldino. Yeah, so I think this is preemptively. And he makes his claims seem reasonable in front of the judge, not in front of the other litigant, right? So he's violating the Isser, right? The Isser that we read yesterday in Hilchos Shoftim, Hilchos Sanhedrin of Ha'onshim Masurin Lahen 21, right? 7, I think, was it's usher for the judge to hear one of the litigants when not in the other one's presence, and it's usher for one of the litigants to make his words heard to the judge beforehand. Okay, so now Rabbeinu Yonah is saying, what benefit is this going to do? So when his friend comes and the judge interrogates him, I think the him is the friend, we'll see, and listens to his arguments. The first guy didn't benefit at all from making his arguments first. But he lost. Because he brought himself into suspicion. Ki ulai yichashaduhu ki al davar asher tanos sheker biado bachar liton lifnei hashofet shelo bifnei baldino. Because maybe because his claims were false, that's why he chose to present them in front of the judge and not in front of the other litigant, because he was afraid he was going to be found out. Ki lo haya motza es libo lahatim dvarav ba'arucha el hashofet lifnei baldino. He's not going to find it in his heart to make his words sound reasonable at length to the judge in front of his fellow litigant, shehu yodea ki sheker biado, because his litigant knows that he's lying. Ukvar amru zal chazal say ki asur lebaldin lahatim devarav ledayan shelo bifnei baldin and chavero. It's usher for the litigant to give the reasons for his case in front of the judge, not in front of his friend. Right. So let's just make sure we get the scenario here. Right. So if so let's say I'm the judge here. So if Zev tries to sneak in before Joe is there, before his fellow litigant is there, and Zev tells me his case at length. So first of all, it's going to seem right, I guess, just because I'm hearing it first, and there's nothing to challenge it. But then when Joe comes in, that's going to and gives a different narrative. That's going to cast not only doubt on like the content of what Zev said, but on his integrity. Because now I as the judge, I'm going to be wondering, well, why did he tell me this whole thing before Joe came? Like, if he was really confident in his claim, he would have testified in the normal way in the presence of another person who's going to challenge him. It's like he's trying to sneak in something and not get caught, So it's going to actually backfire, not just like what we were saying where, there's going to be some sort of anchoring that's going to be to his advantage or disadvantage. It's going to actually backfire because it's going to make him seem like he has something to hide.
So that seems like the audience is the person who wants to wants to do this sneaky move.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is like dissuading him. This is a good example, I think, of Mishlei being a perush on the mitzvahs of the Torah. Of in this case, it's usher for you to go and preemptively testify, and lest you think that you're going to be at an advantage for doing this. No, really, you're going to be at a disadvantage for doing this. It's going to make you seem like a liar.
Yeah, because if you're telling the facts, then you shouldn't care what the other person is hearing you tell the facts, or
right?
Because you have truth on your side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this is Oh, sorry. I'm saying there's a second interpretation. Let's read. I forgot if the second one is related or not.
Is the person telling things that are true and just covering up the aspect of it that are self-incriminating, or is it like?
It's a good question because he starts off sounding like that, right? That he's going to only tell the reasons why he is Zakai and not the reasons why he's liable. Yeah. That was in the first Dibra Moscow and the Rabbeinu Yonah.
Yeah, it sounds like he's like maybe lying by omission. Like he's
yeah, that's a good way. I think it's a good inference.
So he's leaving out the parts that might indicate that he's high.
Right.
So the fact, so when the other guy presents it and he doesn't have and it's like, oh, weren't those also things? And then you're like, oh yeah, or you don't have any.
Yeah.
It's not like you're. It sounds like you're not creating lies about those things. You're just trying to
sidestep them.
You're trying to sidestep them and frame your case in a favorable way.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. And I think that might be part of the reason why the judge is going to suspect him. One is like we just said from the act itself, like why did he feel the need to do this? Isn't he confident in his claim? But then the other one is like there's a clear motion on this guy's part to manipulate the judge. And I think that's going to put the judge on guard of like whoa, like you try to like just like deliver a pristine case on your side in a way that like you were confident that is going to like catch me, but I got you, yeah.
And this might be included what everybody's saying, but it's also when the judge hears the second guy's case and he realizes, okay, that first guy left out a bunch of key details.
Yeah.
It's also going to force the judge to wonder, all right, and then the details that he did tell me, can I even trust those?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Because it wasn't, if everything's presented all at once, so then all the facts just naturally have equal weight. Right. But yeah, if he's right. Okay, let's do the second paragraph. I can't remember if this is similar or not. V'yitachon l'farish lashon v'chakaro. It's possible to explain the expression, and he interrogates him. Kihu sivui al hashofet sheyachkor heitev es re'ehu b'vo'o v'lo yismach al davar midivrei harishon. So it is a commandment to the judge to interrogate very well his fellow who comes, and not to rely on the words of the first guy. V'lo ta'alenu devarav bilvavo, and not let his words enter his heart, ad shamo divrei hasheni, until he hears the words of the second. V'yivchan ha'emes, and he can discern the truth. V'amru zal, ki asur l'shofet lishmoa divrei ba'al din shelo bifnei ba'al din chavera. So this would seem to apply like just in a normal court case, right? That when you hear the first guy testify, you should hold off on forming a judgment until you've heard the other guy, and then like you should form your judgment. Yeah, that's a much more general principle. I mean, it's the same Isser that he's quoting. But it's different principle. Yeah.
Would you say that this move of trying to manipulate people is like, is there a specific failing that happens in a court case, or is that like more general?
Yeah.
Idea of, like people don't like being manipulated?
It's a good question.
I will say one aspect of it is just that you're trying to manipulate the way that someone views something, and this is something that's where you're like definitely going to get found out that you were doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that happens, people will be very suspicious of you.
Right. That's talking about the element of casting aspersions on your own character, which I think is different than when you're asking. You're saying just in terms of between this guy and the judge, when the judge senses he's being manipulated,
right?
Is that something that's like unique to like the court case, or does that apply elsewhere? I mean,
I'm saying I think one element of that definitely applies generally.
Right? Yeah, right. I mean, I feel like the same way when you like when I'm approached in some capacity by like a salesperson who's like overzealous, of like whoa, like this is there's the oatmeal cartoon about this, but like when a salesperson uses your first name a lot. It's just like, what are you doing, man? Like, we're not friends. and it immediately makes me distrustful. So I think that like, whenever you get a whiff of like, oh, they're trying to play me, then this would apply, even though it's not the scenario of like, someone's going to challenge them later. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think that the scope of the pasuk is about the case where your preemptive claim is going to be challenged. But this element of the judge being suspicious, I think, applies outside of the court case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it like the judge is like more on guard here? Like Is that like more and more than most than?
Sounds like it, right? Because sounds like in other words, the normal. Well, actually, what's the I was just gonna ask for a Pirkei Elvis reference, and then my Pirkei Elvis Tana walked out. Yeah, all right, so I have to look it up now. What isn't there a Mishnah in the first parak about like being suspicious of the litigants?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That when the litigants are in front of you, I just want to look it up so I can do the exact citation here. Yeah, it's pretty early, right? Yeah. Let's see here. Avos. Okay.
1:6. I feel like I know that. Like 1:9 is already like
Yeah.
a little further in.
Right.
It's definitely 180.
Yeah, literally.
Maybe the first 6 times. Yeah.
I'll look up. Oh, I've been signed out. What just happened?
Oh no.
It just says I was signed out of Zoom.
I love the saying of the parak and Mishnah, like in the numbers instead of the letters. It's great. To the next.
Hold on.
Would you prefer to say Aleph 8?
No, it's not for it's good. I like it.
Why did I get signed out? And am I signed out? My Zoom is still on.
Yeah, it's mostly because I normally do that first enough.
Right.
No, it says I'm still on. Why did you say I'm signed out?
It's like
I'm still recording. False alarm?
If you want.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to put it on the screen, but yeah,
yeah.
thanks. Yeah. All right. I just have to figure out whether I'm still whether we're still live. Yeah, I think we are. All right. So let me just look here. Just one second. Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. But can you tell me though which one it is?
It's
1-8.
1-8.
Okay. Okay. Mishnah. Mishnah. One Nizikin Avos 1-8. Yeah, 1-8. Okay, Yehuda ben Tabai, Vishimon ben Shatach Kiblu Mehem. Yehuda ben Tabai Omer Altas Atzmachach Orche Hadayanim. What's pshat in that? Don't make yourself like, you know.
Lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the one. Ukashiyihu bale dinim omdim lefenecha. When the litigants are standing in front of you, this is talking to the judges. Yihu beinecha kirashayim. They should be like the wicked, right? Ukashiniftarim lefenecha. But then when they leave, yihu beinecha kizakayin. They should be like innocent. Kishakibla leim esadin. When they accept upon themselves the din.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. So it sounds like from that. So what I was going to say is, it sounds like from the Rabbeinu Yonah that you should be more suspicious than usual if this happens. But a good judge is going to be suspicious anyway, right? Like that you should view them as Rashayim, you know? But it does sound like this is going to prompt a more natural suspicion.
Right.
Like if the judge were not implementing that ideal in Pirkei Avos, then this is going to make him suspect that this guy's a liar.
Like there's like the aspect of the judge is trying to put himself in the right emotional framework towards the people.
Yeah.
And here what you're doing is like ensuring that he's gonna investigate you.
Yes. Yeah. You're setting yourself up to be in line with what should be his natural suspicious, mentality. Yeah.
Which is the very thing that you're trying to.
Right. Yeah. And that's the point I want to emphasize is according to Rabbeinu Yonah, it really is a very Mishlei mida connected mida. You're trying to get an edge, and then you do it in a way that backfires. Yeah.
Yeah, I think both approaches, but particularly Rabbeinu Yonah's, can apply also like socially. And I can't think of a particular example in my life, but I know that it exists.
Yeah.
Like when two people in the same social circle get into a fight.
Yeah.
And like one person will just casually like bring it up in conversation, like kind of like, bashing the other person a little bit, like almost subtly. Then you'll find out from the other person or even a third party that they're actually in a fight. And then you realize like, oh, and that guy was trying to like,
yeah.
And you realize he's basically just trying to manipulate.
Yeah, that's a good example. Right. Yeah, and that's even harder because the parameters of the din are not set, or you're not even aware that there's a din going on. Like it's just like you just think that it's casual report, which I guess is another reason why rechilus and lashon hara are so dangerous, because people are making false tainas or distorted tainas, false claims, and they're doing it in a casual setting, so you're not going to notice that you've been hoodwinked in this way. you're not in the position of the judge where you are set to like fact check everyone, and and guard against things like this. Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out exactly how to present it in a more abstract way.
Yeah.
So when you are trying to frame the way that someone thinks about something,
Mm-hmm.
Like to be in line with like how you want them to see it, and so whether or not they realize that there's any sort of like judgment going on, when they realize that, like when they see that there's another side, and that you were framing in a way that was like for your own benefit.
Yeah.
Then people will be distrustful of you more than if you had presented everything objectively, because now even the things that you said that are true, they don't know if they can trust it. Because you're clearly just like self-interested, not interested in.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And therefore, the practical advice is it's in your best interest. First of all, practically, when you're formulating your presentation, take into account what the opposition is going to say about you, and don't fall into that trap of like omitting things or overshooting how well you like present your own, not how well, but like the kind of like entirely positive light in which you present your own case. In other words, like we were saying yesterday, like, this is the fallacy of the straw man argument, where you deliberately oversimplify the opposition's case, and then you're proven to be a manipulator and like a not honest, like not honestly engaging with the other opposition, with the other side. Instead, you should steelman the other person's case. And at the very least in your own mind, like keep the strongest version of your opponent's argument in your mind and present your case, treating it as though the judge is going to hear that right afterwards and think how that's going to cause him to reflect on your words,
I feel like that could also like trip you up though. If you're like trying to answer up all their questions in your like presentation of your side. It could like
you might say I murdered the victim like this.
Yeah.
But that's ridiculous, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. I guess there is a slight difference in. That's a good question. It's a tricky balance. I mean, I guess the key thing is that the person who's not even factoring that in is definitely going to be at a loss. The balancing act of how to present your case in a way that's convincing, but also doing justice to the opponent's side so as to not fall into the trap of making your side seem suspect. Right. That's like I guess it's right. It's a tricky balance. It's and clearly our pasuk is not telling us how to do that. That's like you have to learn rhetoric for that, but yeah.
My guess about it would be like to the extent that an argument for their side would naturally come up, then you should address it.
Yeah. Certainly don't introduce. Well, I wouldn't even say that. Like, I think
them, then it might be good.
Yeah, meaning like if you, I guess in a court case it's very different because that is like has like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and like it's set, But let's say you're giving an argument for something in learning, right? In philosophy or whatever, right? And or in halakha, whatever, I don't care. So you might even be to your advantage to bring up an argument that your live opponent is not even going to make right now, because let's say someone who's listening in the future, if they encounter that argument, they'll have heard you raise it and object to it. Even if this particular opponent is not going to bring it up.
Yeah. And even if they don't remember what exactly your objection is. Yes.
Yeah. The very fact that you acknowledged it, if you didn't even bring it up, they could just say, oh, he didn't know about it. And like, maybe this is a legitimate claim, but if you brought, this is something I have to think about a lot in teaching is like, on the one hand, well, especially in high school, on the one hand, I'm not going to bring up all of the false opinions and objections to everything, but there are certain key ones that are not naturally being asked by the students. But let's say like I know that this is an objection that they're going to encounter as soon as they go to college or as soon as they Google this. So then it is in my advantage to bring it up, even though they didn't actually ask it, in order to preemptively like nip it in the bud. Yeah.
It almost reminds me like in Rabbi Feder's year, when someone gives a svara and Rabbi Feder says, that's one way to go. And like, you know, when he says that, like he's acknowledging, like, yeah, like what you're saying is good, but that's not the optimal way to solve this problem.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think.
I'm just gonna say about that. I think what Rabbi Feder says that means it's not the way that he was thinking about the word depth.
Yeah. But sometimes you can tell in his voice. Yeah. Whether it is in an improving or disapproving way, you know,
but either way, you know that his svara is going to be better.
Yeah.
I guess there's like the times where he's like, that's one way to go, but like I went a different way.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's one way to go.
And then,
like 10 minutes later in this year when he gives his svara, he'll like figure out exactly what it was why he didn't like that, and then I'll explain that.
But either way, he's probably thought of what you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I think presenting all of the counter arguments that come up naturally is the way to avoid this pitfall.
Yes.
And you don't have to present any further arguments for this side in order to not have this issue.
Yeah.
But in order to maximize the benefit of presenting both sides, you should even go to the part where they're not necessarily presenting it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think those are two different things.
Yeah. So does this help us at all in the way we were learning the Metzudas David yesterday? Like that, certainly there is a basis, the anchoring effect is real and the judge has to guard against that. But it also does seem like depending on how the first guy, in other words, this phenomenon that Rabbeinu Yonah is describing might still happen even if he doesn't preemptively, illegally present his case. Right. In other words, all this whole discussion we're having is if I'm the first guy to testify or to present my case, and I just don't do I present it in such an uneven way that just favors me, like lahatim devarai, to make my words tasty or whatever, reasonable, I could fall into the same trap, and it could end up backfiring. So I think there is room for both interpretations.
Yeah, it's less suspicious, I think.
Yeah, because you're not trying to game the system. You're just not making the best argument. Alrighty,
cool.
It's good. By the way, I think it's fair to say that the